When I was 10 years old, my life changed because we were on an island off the coast of Thailand, and that's when the 2004 tsunami hit. Less than Christian is for me right now. And that's how close the grips of death was to us. I just had this feeling like everything is going to be okay. Like God has me. To be really vulnerable, like I wasn't used to healthy love. I remember my mom a few years prior called me and she was like, Riley, you're so focused on finding the one, but why don't you become the one worth finding? It was so cool because love found me in my purpose. And so like in the waiting, it's like, don't let it be something that slows you down. Yeah. Like keep going and being obedient. And I'm so glad I dated the unexpected.
Welcome back to the Dear Future Husband podcast. I'm your host, Christian, and I'm so excited to have you here today and to also have my friend Riley coming back to the podcast.
Yes, my second time round.
But I think you were single or engaged last time.
No, I think I just started dating Jack, my now husband, which is so wild.
And now, you're married, you have a little baby.
I have a little baby, Esther.
Cute. Our babies just traveled together and we were like, this is so fun. Travel with your friends.
They were so cute. They were just staring at each other. Yeah. Just like two little humans like, whoa, you're a baby
other
too.
Ones of you. Everyone else is so big. It was really cute. Well, I love that, I've gotten to see some of your journey from, the faith that you had in singleness, the passion you had there, and how that's just grown into marriage, how it wasn't two different things, but just different parts of your life. And, your story is so much about faith and courage and listening to the Lord's instruction. And that's what I want to have a conversation today, because whether you're in the dating field and you're like, Lord, I need you to direct me. It is hard out here. Please just steer me from the red flags into the green flags. Or if you are getting ready for a season of marriage, or maybe it's something completely different. It's a health journey. It's something you feel like God's calling you into. I just want to have a topic here and a conversation, and hopefully just Holy Spirit led, of what it looks like to hear from God, to follow him, and to have faith when you're not hearing from him. And I feel like the best way to launch us into that is to share a little bit about your story that you shared in your book. 3 Seconds of Courage. Shameless plug. But just to share, because I feel like that really ramps people up of like, whoa, I want to hear what this girl has to say.
Yeah, so you're probably going to start detecting a little bit of an accent. I grew up in New Zealand on a farm. And when I was 10 years old, my life changed because we were on an island off the coast of Thailand. And that's when the 2004 tsunami hit. I was 10 years old, had to run for my life. The tsunami was less than Christian is for me right now. So just like a few feet from us. And I mean, that's how close the grips of death was to us. And we ended up we were on this little island off the coast of Thailand with my whole extended family. And we had to run for our lives. And there was this one moment, I remember we ran to the very top of the hill and by the grace of God had survived. And I remember falling to my knees.
That was a lot. Sorry. So you grew up on this little farm and you're just visiting Thailand.
We were just,
so it's so freak. Okay, sorry.
You're like, context.
Oh my, wait, what?
Jump right on in.
I grew up on a farm, I almost died. It's fine.
Yeah, so our family, I have 2 younger sisters, and we would always go traveling. And my parents saw travel as part of our education. Just as much as you would learn in a math class, you would learn in Thailand or just on a beach somewhere. And so our family had traveled to Thailand to go. My grandfather lived there, and he would live half the year in Thailand and half the year in Italy because he had summer. You'll love this.
Arden.
He had summer in both places because he loved. Is that not a brilliant idea?
That's genius. I mean, I know there's a season for everything, but
there's
doesn't have to be.
Summer, I know. We don't need no winter. And so we went there to go visit my grandfather, but we also were helping at an orphanage to rescue children from the sex trade. And so after being at that orphanage for a few weeks, my parents had booked this a holiday with our extended side of the family on the island off the coast of Thailand. And so we spent Christmas Day there, and I remember running around eating so much chocolate because they had this chocolate fountain, and I was just I'm 10 years old, just living my best life.
This is amazing.
And then the day after Christmas, that's when we woke up in the morning. There was an earthquake. like unbeknown to us, is a 9.1 magnitude earthquake. Like things were just falling off the wall. And I remember rushing into my parents' room and being like, what is going on? And my mom was like, it's an earthquake. Don't worry. It's going to be over soon. And like the second she said that, the earthquake stopped. And then we like call the reception. We're like, hey, what's going on? Like, is there another earthquake that's coming? And they were like, oh no, there's none. Like, don't worry. So then we carry on with our day, and mid-morning, that's when my dad came out to my sisters and I were playing, like building sandcastles on the beach. I'm like 10 and I have 2 younger sisters. And he's like, hey girls, we're going to like start walking back to our room. And it's just, our story is so filled with God's hand in the details, because we had booked beachfront bungalows. And when we got into the island, they had accidentally double booked us. And instead given us middle of the island concrete apartments, top floor rooms. And this later on was one of the only few buildings that would like stood the tsunami. And so we were walking back to our room, and this is like a tiny island. Like it's like takes a few minutes to walk from one side of the island to the other. And it's flat in the middle with palm trees everywhere, and then 2 big cliffs on either side. And as we're walking back, I just remember like, so there was like tons of wildlife on this island. I remember everything just went like so quiet. Like it was just, all you could hear was human voices. And there was these like birds flew up and left the island. Dogs howled as if they'd been hurt and started running. Like these animals like knew danger was coming.
Before you knew anything.
Like 2 minutes before. So then I remember just being like, okay, that felt so eerie. And then we keep walking. My mom was at the reception making a phone call. So it's just my dad and my 2 younger sisters. And then like a minute after this, we're almost at our room. I just hear screams and shouts. And I look back through the palm trees to the beach, and I just see just this scene of chaos. Like people are running in all sorts of directions. They're banging into each other. And there's so many people pointing out to the ocean. And in the ocean, all the water had left. And it was like left so quickly. There's fish flopping around everywhere. There's boats now on the sand. Snorkelers are now stuck on reefs. And then you see this like thin white line, which was a 50-foot tsunami coming at our island at a rapid speed. And so I look up at my dad and I'm like, where's mom? Like, where is she? My mom had seen this whole thing happening, ran to where our sandcastles were, and realized like we weren't anywhere there. And she stops, closes her eyes, and she's like, God, where are my children? And she hears one word, flee. And so she starts running back to where we were in our room, like outside the door of our room. And I just remember seeing my mom, and she's like a powerful, strong woman. And there's like fear in her eyes. And she's yelling, run at the top of her lungs. And we just like gather together as a family. At this point, I don't know where my grandfather is, where my cousins are. And we start running up. Another like God miracle is the day before we'd gotten lost, my mom and I, and we found a pathway up one of the cliffs because we'd gotten lost. So we're there in this moment trying to figure out how to get to high ground. My mom says, Riley, that path we found. And so we start running up that path, and there's this moment, like I look behind me and I just remember like I wish I hadn't, because I just like saw the tsunami was now like just like almost over the island. And I saw like there's a man stuck on his boat, and I just watch as like the tsunami just destroys him. And I just see like the tsunami destroy everything in its path. And I just remember hearing like screams and shouts and like seeing sights of like people's lives being taken. And I just remember being like, God, like, where are you right now? Like, I need you. And my little sister, she's like 5 years old. She just like, the only thing she remembers from this day is my prayers. And I just was like, as we're running up this hill as fast as we possibly could, I'm just like, Jesus, come, like, I need you, like, rescue us. And I don't, like, I'm 10 years old. I don't fully understand what's going on, but I just saw people die. And I'm like, I might not live. And the tsunami gets closer and closer. And at one point, it's less than, like, the distance between you and I. And, like, that's how close death was to us. And I just remember having one of these moments that I, like, it's a moment I will never forget because of God's, like, tangible presence. We like run to the top of the hill, and there's like a grassy patch, and now we're high enough that the tsunami wave can't reach us. And I fall to my knees and I'm like, God, come. And I just feel this peace of God. Like, I just had this feeling like everything is going to be okay. Like, God has me. And it felt like almost as if like somebody came and like put a warm blanket or gave me like a hug. And here I am, this 10-year-old little girl. And it's such a reminder, like, I'm having my worst day I've ever had in my life. Like, the most horrendous, the most traumatic day. And yet God met me. And it's like when we say his name, he comes. Like, he will never forsake us. He will never leave us. And I don't even remember what I prayed. I just know I kept saying his name. And I was like on my knees. I felt his presence. And here I am, this like 10-year-old little girl, like as death and devastation is happening all around me, as like 230,000 people are dying. It's the deadliest natural disaster of the 21st century. It devastated the coastline of 14 countries. And yet in the midst of all this devastation, I'm learning the truth that God, he will come. Like, it is God whose name we say. It is God who we call out on our worst possible day. It is God who will meet us. It's God who will give us that peace that transcends all understanding, will guard our hearts and our mind. And we ended up, like, a long story short, there was 3 tsunami waves that struck that day. We stayed up on that high point and we found a radio, and the Thai government had taken over all the radio stations, and they told us like, hey, there's another tsunami wave coming, like get to high ground. And we stayed up there until they said, hey, there's no more waves coming. You can return to ground level. And we waited still a few more hours because we were like, I'm not in a rush to go back down. Y'all said
the earthquake was done, and look what happened.
So we like get back down to ground level, and I just remember just like calling out our cousins' names, and I'm like, yeah, it was like, it is still something that the Lord like is healing in me, because I remember like going up to bodies and like thinking maybe this is my cousin. And we just like couldn't find our family members, like assumed the worst. But it wasn't until that night where a man guided us to the other cliff on the other side of the island, and he tells us to stay the night there because the tides were so just totally out of sync. And so there was a really high tide that people thought was going to be another wave. And so this Thai man like guides us to the other side of the island up the cliff. And there is every single member of my family had survived. And I just remember it was like this reunion that like movies are made out of. Like, I'm running up and I see my grandfather, my auntie, my uncle, and like God had rescued every single one of them. And so the next day we like, there's a rescue boat that come, and I watch as my cousins and my like aunties and uncles all get on the boat, and I'm like, grab my bag. Like, I'm ready to get back to New Zealand. Like, take me to my home. I'm like, take me to my bed. I miss my pony, Charlie. Like, I want to be home. And my mom is like, hey girls, we're going to stay. And I was like, why would we? What do you mean we're going to stay? And she's like, Dad and I are going to help the Thai people who have lost everything rebuild their lives. And so I watched as the next week, my sisters and I just stayed in a hotel room, which remained untouched by, it was crazy, another God miracle. So we stay in our hotel room, and I just watch as my parents go every day. And I, to this day, don't really know what they did. I just know that they didn't want to tell us. I'm like, we'd have already experienced so much, but they were just like helping people like search for things, rebuild things, move debris. And then it got to this point where we had such limited access to food and water because there's no electricity. Like, there's like the food and water is, most of it had just been washed away. And so we get to this point where we start praying for a rescue boat to come. And then a week later, a rescue boat came with all these volunteers from like World Vision and like charities that work in natural disaster relief. And I remember this one lady, she was wearing this like orange shirt with World Vision on it. And she runs up to me and hugs me. I'm not sure why she like ran up to me out of all the survivors, but she hugged me. I just like cried and cried and cried. And then we go from there, we catch a plane, we go back to New Zealand. And understandably so, like, I'm not the same. I had so much to process, and yet I was so much more dependent on God.
Goodness. Well, I definitely have been crying listening to all that. I mean, the mix of the goodness of God and the the all that comes in times like that, that could be traumatic. And like, I think there's so many questions that someone watching would have based on where they are. But as a mom listening to that, just even what I think is so beautiful is, like you're saying, calling on the voice of God, and he'll never leave you in a way that's very much clear. Like, as a mom, I'd be like, no, I'm not leaving this sandcastle until I find the cutie that was holding that shovel. But him knowing, I've already led them the right way. I need you to catch up, like telling your mom to flee. Yeah. And so I'm like, there's this thing that takes over and surpasses even like human understanding or reasoning, but also like marries it of like, oh yes, we found that path yesterday, and like God's going to use that and speak into that. And so I think if I could insert myself as someone watching, is like the question I think is, well, how do we hear God in such a clear way? Because I'm like, I want to be that directed in the big times and the little times. Yeah. And I want to let the little times fuel that closeness with him and that listening to him. So I know, even when there's shouting, literal shouting, or just the echoes and the pressures of the world, I want to know his voice. Yeah. And I think that's so powerful. Whatever season you're in, be singleness, be marriage, be you're not in that hard time yet, or hey, when that day comes, I just want to be prepared.
Yeah, that's so good.
Even trying to prepare for this earlier, of like where the Holy Spirit would lead in this conversation, I was thinking of the woman with the issue of the blood in Luke 8. And I was thinking, man, I love her faith. And at least for me, I know there's times where I'm like, okay, God, I'm dependent on you. So will you speak to me in a certain way? And that's usually come through dreams. And I love that God's been so clear in so many ways. But this season, there hasn't been a lot. And so I'm like, are you not talking? Because I'm used to you speaking this way. And what just struck me about her story is he said, I didn't tell her to come touch me. Her faith told her to come touch me.
Come on.
And then I moved through her faith.
Wow.
I was like, wow, so faith can be that still small voice, a word from someone else, or it could just be acting and like his love and grace meets us. Yeah. And I just love that, because I'm like, I want to be led by you. I want you to tell me where to go. And I just feel like in that moment he's saying, well, what does my word say to do? What does my character say to do? What is what you believe about me lead you to do?
Oh, that's
so that just struck me today. I've never thought about her story that way of, I don't know. Yeah,
no,
that makes sense.
I remember I had this season, and there's a lot of like mystics that call it like the dark night of the soul, where it's like these seasons of your life where it seems like God remains quiet. And I remember I had this season, I just moved from Los Angeles to LA, from New Zealand to Los Angeles, and I'm now in like this whole new community and culture, and I don't know anyone. I'm like, I don't even know how to drive on this side of the road. And
you were pretty young, right? Like early 20s?
Yeah, I was 21. And I just remember my spiritual mentor at the time said like you get to that point in friendship where you sit next to each other silently because you're comfortable with each other. And she was like, what if God is just silently sitting next to you? And as you were talking, Christian, I was thinking about the person I've just been so inspired by. And it's just this tiny little chapter, paragraph in 2 Kings, where Elijah goes and he gives this prophetic word to the king, and then the Lord says like, go, you need to flee. And so then he goes to the brookside and he sits there, and he is by the brookside like all by himself, and ravens, which to him and in his culture, ravens would be like a pig bringing you food. Like it's like the dirtiest at that time. Like ravens were considered the dirtiest animal. So ravens are bringing him his food, and he's drinking the water from the brookside. And God had given him this directive, go to the brookside. And then it says that when the water dried up, then God spoke to Elijah. And I just think about, and it's just a small little paragraph, but I think about Elijah sitting there as day goes by, and his water is getting less and less and less, and yet he did not leave. And I'm like, I want to have that sort of obedience where it's like God has called you somewhere, and even if it's costly, you're like, God, I will stay until you tell me to. But just as you said, Christian, it's like, how do we hear the voice of God so that we know when to go? We know when to stay.
Because he fled and then he stayed.
Yeah.
And like there's the instruction that is so I don't know. I'm like type A. So I'm like, there's logic and there's good reason, but then there's faith that has to trump both. And so,
but then there's times like you're saying of this woman that goes and touches Jesus, where I sometimes feel like we think that like a door, we have to, like sometimes faith is like the automatic door, but an automatic door doesn't open until you start walking towards it. And then there's things in our life that it's like God gives you this little prompting and you feel like you're meant to go to it, or like wisdom is saying this is the best possible option, like start walking towards this, and or like your GPS and of wisdom, and you start walking towards it and then it opens. And so sometimes we have to take those faith steps, and the Lord is like, what are you going to do when I am quiet?
Right. And the whole verse of knock and see, the door is shut if you're knocking. Yeah. If the door was wide open, you wouldn't be knocking. You just go on it. And so I think the idea of approaching something that feels like it's a dead end or impossible, that takes faith. Yeah. Like if you're dating and you're like, there's no men out here, or do you see my lineage? There's no way I can have a healthy marriage. It's like you have to first knock in faith that it will be answered, that there's someone listening on the other side. So if I could tie your tsunami with your dating
from 10 years old forward.
So you're living in LA. Your younger sisters, you mentioned, they both got married. Yes. Ahead of you. You officiated one of your sister, or both of your sisters' weddings. Where some people were like, what? You can do that? Yeah, sidebar. But what did that look like to say, okay, God, you literally saved me from the most catastrophic natural disaster in the 21st century, to now our emotions are big, they're real. It could feel like, hey, this feels like a storm inside of me, of just the timelines maybe you thought, or just curious. What did that look like applying those principles?
No, that's I feel for people who are listening right now, because I felt you. And I've been there before, where you have this expectation and this timeline of when you're going to get married and when it's going to happen. And then all of a sudden you're like overdue. You're like way past the expiration date. And you're like, okay, Lord, like what is happening? Like I remember
can I pause? I'm sorry. Because in the South, it was always like, okay, you graduated and then you need to be married. Or you're a spinster if you're like 21. Yeah. So what's the New Zealand? What was your expectations?
Well, New Zealand, I feel like, I mean, the South I've definitely noticed is a lot younger. But in New Zealand, it's probably like most people, I feel like on average would get married by like 24. But like I got married when I was like 27. So I'm like years past it. And I remember I had written my New Year's resolution was to get a boyfriend. And it didn't happen for 7 years. And I kept putting it on. I was like, Lord, I have faith that this is going to happen. And like,
He's like, which year? Which New Year?
And so like all these years are going by, and it felt like there's psychologists call it vicarious grief. It's like when you grieve something you can't see. And it felt like I was experiencing vicarious grief in my singleness. And I remember there's this one moment where I went to my younger sister's bachelorette party, and I go home and I had bought her this really large, fluffy like bear that was like said Happy Valentine's Day. I gave it to her. And then she was like flying back to San Francisco. We were in San Diego at the time. And so I was like, I'll take the bear. So I like go home and I'm like in my apartment on my own. And I remember seeing in my family's group chat, like one sister came home and they went and tried on her wedding rings. And then the other sister came home and her husband was holding, like at the airport, holding red flowers, like red roses. And I remember I'm going home to an empty apartment with this like life-size fluffy bear. And I'm like, I feel so sad. And I just remember like being like getting on my knees and being like, God, where are you? And what I was doing, what I was expressing is lament. And lament is like what you do when it feels like your prayers remain unanswered and God is silent. And lament is this practice that we have as Christians where we can be honest towards the Lord. And we're like David, a third of his Psalms is lament, where we're like, God, like, where are you right now? Like, come and be with me. And I just remember lamenting, and I experienced the closeness of God, that God is close to the brokenhearted. Yeah. And so I remember being like, God, like I'm so focused on finding the one. And I remember on a call with my mom, she was like, Riley, you're so focused on finding the one, but why don't you become the one worth finding? And she was like, you want to find the right person, but become the right person.
And you were already walking with the Lord. Like your mom
Yes.
knew you're an incredible person. Because I think some people hear that and it's like, oh, I'm not good enough. But you're saying, what I'm hearing is it's like more of a mentality shift rather than.
Yeah,
I just want to specify that for people that are like, oh, so I'm not good enough.
No,
her mom was calling her out.
No, and it's like it shifts when you like lets go of control, when you shift from being like so focused on going. I'd be like every room I'd walk into, I'd be like, Lord, is he here? Like, where is he? And instead it shifted when I put the attention on the very thing that I could control, that I could grow, which was myself, and which was also my character, and it also was my relationship on the Lord. Like it comes back to hearing the voice of God, because when it gets that time where you're in front of a guy and you're going on a date with him, like Jack was the unexpected for me, but I learned to hear the voice of God.
And you had clarity, and that led you through those seasons. I feel like if we can dive deeper into that topic one more time, that there is this natural eagerness that comes when that's a desire of your heart and you're seeing other people walk in it. So naturally things are going to bubble up. And I think there's almost, if you meet it with the less of control and the delayed or the preceding hope of, I love that for them. Lord, I believe that this is going to happen for me. Like there's naturally something that's going to arise. But the two things that rob or really inhibit in that season is sadness or more disappointment, and then fear. Of like fear of, oh, well, if they found someone, then what if it doesn't happen to me? Like there's this limited supply of, or that was the one person that was available.
And those things choke our faith.
Right.
If we let them, and they can slowly become the thing that's in the driver's seat of your life. Right. And when you start to make decisions based off your sadness and based off your fear, that's when you know you're getting in this like almost danger zone, and it's time to like shift towards faith and hope and courage.
Yeah, because that's when people settle, or they just give up hope, or they do forsake God of, oh, you're just not listening, you're really not there. And I love that you're saying, God, where are you? Not, God, why are you not here? You weren't saying you're absent. You're saying, I can't see you, but I know you're here. Show yourself. Like, show me how you're working in this situation. And I love with the woman with the issue of the blood, it even says, and when the woman saw that she was not hidden, she came trembling. And I feel like when we're single, we feel like, oh, we're in a hidden place. We're not forsaken. I can act out. But then her face, she just does this. I even imagine if I were her, I'd touch him and be like, what did I just do? Like, am I touching this man? And then him calling her out, like, I don't know, having that kind of faith that just makes you move almost innately. You know this since you had a baby. Whenever I had my second, I had prodromal labor, which is like Braxton Hicks of like, oh, these feel like contractions was not the right thing. Yeah. So I was having those, and I was like, it's good, it's still going to happen. You know, I'm not going to get overexcited or get fearful. But then when it was actually time, like my body just started moving in a way that I was like, oh, I'm not even doing this. I'm just like acting out of this response to something. And I feel like she's in that similar thing of, oh, there's Jesus, I'm going to go touch it. What am I doing? I'm touching his helm. And I wonder what that could look like in our relationships and our dating and our singleness. Like even when you met Jack, what was it if you were like, oh, wait, I'm falling in love with this guy. This is just happening almost naturally or peacefully. What was that like?
I remember praying to God, like, give me a husband. Like, I have this desire, and I didn't know what to do with this desire. And then I remember being like, wait, God gave me this desire. Like, I'm praying to him about the very thing that he gave me. And yet it's still this desire that the safest place for it to be is surrendered. Like, I remember waking up one night and the Holy Spirit was like, Riley, if you never wrote a book, would I be enough? If you never like had a child, would I be enough? If you never spoke on a stage, would I be enough? And then finally, if you never had a husband, would I be enough? And I just remember as tears are like falling down my face, I remember saying yes. And even when we give our desire to Jesus, that is the safest place. So Jack, our story is so to backtrack a little bit, because I feel like it's an important place to note, because I think that often when it comes to these desires, they can lead us to slowing down when we don't see that they're happening, instead of like taking the desires, giving them to the Lord, but keep your pace when it comes to your purpose. And so Jack first like heard about me because my friends and I were leading like revivals on the beaches of California. It was during COVID, church shut down. So we were like, we need to do something about this. So we just started setting up stages and just preaching the gospel. And this one little girl, Natalie, is walking on the beach, and she's 5 years old. She sees this whole like crowd, and she drags her mom over, and her mom, they're like not Christians. They're like, what is going on? And then Natalie jumps on me and hugs me, crying her eyes out, and is saying, I feel God. I feel God. Like this 5-year-old who didn't come from a Christian family, but yet she knew God when she felt him. And after we hugged for 20 minutes, I led her to Jesus, and she's now like an evangelist in her kindergarten. She led her kindergarten teacher to the Lord, 5 years old. So I share about her story online. And that night, this lady randomly walked up to me and was like, tonight, she like appeared out the crowd and was like, tonight is going to be important for your love story. And I was like, okay. And then turned around and left. And I was like, okay, but I was like in ministry mode. So I'm like going back to the praying over the person I was with. And then I posted a photo of Natalie's story. I was just so inspired by this little 5-year-old girl's faith. And then Jack saw somebody share this story, and it was just like so cool because he followed me on Instagram, but it was so cool because love found me in my purpose. And so like in the waiting, it's like, don't let it be like something that slows you down. Like keep going and being obedient. Like it reminds me of Ruth and Boaz, how like Ruth is in the field and she's being faithful to the field, and Boaz sees her in the field doing what she's called to. And so like a question for you would be like, how are your desires, like, how are they impacting the other parts of your life? Right. Like, is this desire for a husband, like, is it compelling you forward? Just as you said, sadness and fear, like, they can often want us to slow down and not even do things in our life outside of our love story. But, like, make sure that you are, like, continuing to pursue the giftings and the calling that God has on your life. Fast forward 6 months later, a mutual friend was like, hey, you and Jack should like go on a date. And I didn't know anything about Jack. And so he sends me a voice message inviting me to be a +1 to a wedding in Mexico. That's our first ever date.
Boys be bold.
In Mexico. And so I was like, okay, I don't even know what you look like. I don't know what your personality is like. Can we FaceTime? And so he was like, yeah, sure. So we FaceTime. And I remember, like, I'm sure you've met people where you meet them and you're like, I just want to be your friend. Like, you straight away just like have this, like, I love talking to you, and it's so easy. And I felt that with Jack, not like I was friend zoning him, but I was like, friendship was so easy. And like, love is friendship ablaze. Like, love is friendship on fire. And friendship, like, I remember Tim Keller said, like, if you're in a room full of men and you're trying to figure out which one you should date, ask yourself, which one would I want to be friends with the most? Because we know it, like, there's days when romance, like, you still feel the romance, but there is such a core part of marriage that is friendship. Yeah. And so while we're on this FaceTime, my mom doesn't know what's happening. She drops on her knees and starts interceding for my love story. And then,
I love all your mom's little woes and like her fasting for your husband. I know. We're going to interview Riley's mom next.
No, she did a 40-day fast for my husband. I told you that?
I think so. When you were little? Or she did for all your sisters, right?
Yeah. And she did like a 40-day juice fast. I'm like, no wonder my man is incredible. Thank the Lord for my mama.
I'll do that for Azzy. I can't do it for Tatum because Arden's like, she's never getting married. She's staying forever.
She'll be like in your house forever.
I'm like, it's fine. I support it.
So anyway.
So she drops to her knees.
Yeah. So, and then she calls me later that day and she's like, hey, what were you doing at 2 p.m.? And I like tell her I was FaceTiming this guy. She didn't say anything, but she's like, Riley met her husband. She just knows. But then we go on this weekend to Mexico, and it's like we flew into Mexico, and then we're like had to get on this bus. It's like a town in the middle of nowhere, and I had this moments where I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I'm with this guy that I just met at LAX, and then here I am meeting his entire community. They're like trying to like drill me to see how I am, and I'm like, I don't even know how I'm in this situation. And the whole time I remember thinking, like, it's like Shrek, like I like him not, I like him, because I wasn't like, to be really vulnerable, like, I wasn't used to healthy love. I was like living in LA, and I had used, like, I remember my mom a few years prior called me and she was like, Riley, you have an addiction. I was like, what addiction? She's like, you're a male attention addict. And I was like, okay, mama, you call me out. But like, it was true. Like, I was going on dates pursuing guys because
shocked.
because I was like, it was like a form of me getting something out of somebody else that was really a God-sized hole that Jesus was meant to fill. And so here I am, and I've been dating like these LA actors and like just like, and then Jack comes along and he's so healthy and steadfast. And at the end of the weekend, he's like, I want to pursue you. But then I just freaked out because I also had this feeling in me. I was like, this really could be it. We're having conversations about like traveling as missionaries and being generous, and we're crying in them. And I'm feeling the presence of God, and I'm feeling peace. And I remember feeling like I didn't have like butterflies, but I felt so safe. Yeah. And I remember thinking, so do we have no chemistry? And I saw this picture of like, no, really. I remember seeing this picture of like a piece of toast with butter, and it was like not melting. And I was like, I feel like it's just like we don't have chemistry and things won't like melt. Mm-hmm. And then flash forward. So I ended up friend zoning him twice. And thank the Lord he kept pursuing. But then flash forward a month later, at this point we're still just friends, but he was in Oregon and I was in San Diego, and he comes to San Diego for work apparently. I'm like, really?
Right.
And then we're sitting on this, like, it was totally a date, but I was refusing to call it a date, and I'm looking at him across the table, and I all of a sudden am like hit with like, oh my gosh, he's so cute, I want to kiss him. And then I remember seeing the picture of the Lord, like the Lord showed me the picture of the bread and it melted. And he was like Riley, I can give chemistry. And like, and I was like, okay, Jesus. And I'm so glad I dated the unexpected, that I dated somebody that in hindsight was so healthy, but I didn't know it because I was so used to something else. And like, I remember a pastor in New Zealand said, like, you date your self-esteem. And I was like, I had to grow in my self-esteem, like those years leading up to Jack. And then one of the best things I did in my singleness was like, I took a year of intentional singleness where I talk about like open and closed singleness, where I was just closed and I just like didn't date anyone, didn't have crushes, so that I could like become dependent on the voice of God, and I could heal the things that were in me that were not good.
Yeah. I went through that season too. I feel like it's so needed sometimes. And probably where I feel like we might be similar. It's like I was technically still a good girl, but I had some not so good outworkings. And I feel like those creep in so much more subtly. Yeah. Of like, well, I don't even know I'm looking for attention. And so I was there too. I feel like we've all have like our own ways, and romance to me is something that is so beautiful, but so misconstrued, especially in the single and dating seasons, where it is like, oh, well, what's this fire growing? But it should start as these sparks, and like the real fire is like an intimacy that can only come once you're united. And then there's like this vulnerability and things like that. But we think, oh, it needs to be this all intense, like hot and heavy. But
it's so true. It's such a good thing that we don't experience the full intensity of it. Like Jack and I both had never had sex, and we waited until we were married. And I remember then
butter melting.
Was like, okay, we're set for life. But like it's good.
But no one tells you that, and that's not what you see in the movies. Yes. You see it all coming in the 2-hour screening, and it's like it's got to be there or it's not. And don't get me wrong, my husband is smoking hot, like could be on GQ. But even when we met, I felt the like, oh, there's something that's still going to be gradually released, and it felt weird. And there wasn't the like, hey, baby. And so I think we I think healthy dating is a lot of breaking down what we've been taught about dating. And so I love what you're saying is, you know, there is things that maybe part of our soul recognizes of he'll be this way, or maybe this will be his passions or his career or something about his looks, but then also leaving room for like, okay, God, maybe you're going to speak things when I meet him, or when we're dating, or when I take a leap of faith. And so if I were to put a bow on all that we're saying, what I'm hearing is you being intimate with the Lord has led you in very much life-saving ways. And it's led you in clearly setting things up for the rest of your life. That's like, wow, I had peace in the moments where there could have been confusion or it made no sense. And so if you were speaking to someone that's like in this season of saying, Riley, I love this. I want to hear the Lord. I want him to convict me. I want him to lead me. What's the best way that they can be sure that they're welcoming that in or that he is the one speaking?
That's so good. Every morning I wake up and before I look at my phone, I spend time with the Lord. And I just know that just like hearing the voice of God is like learning a new language, where it's something you have to practice and you have to try and you have to put yourself out there and fail. And also I would encourage, I've just like been to a few speaking events recently where there's some girls that are like, they're very set on what they feel like God said to tell them to do. And there's like almost like this kind of God said I have to go to this coffee shop at this time. And sometimes that's really good. And then sometimes it's too much. And so I would just encourage you, learn to hear the voice of God, but not in a way where it's feeling like I have to do this. And it's feeling restrictive, and God's voice, and God is love. And so there is this beautiful sense of freedom, and yet this sense of protectiveness of God. And so I would just encourage you, spend time with Jesus so that you can hear his voice and hear his promptings and learn wisdom. Because there are times when we don't hear his voice clearly, but we know what wisdom would have done. Yeah. And then I also would say find mentors. I call them my board of directors, but it's mentors for different areas of my life. And when I was single, I pursued them, and I was meeting up with every mentor at least once a month, because I knew that there's going to be blind spots that I can't see that I need someone else to identify in me. And then I would also say be aware of the friends that you have, because you want to find friends that are on fire for Jesus, because just as if you were on fire and I'm not, all of a sudden your fire is going to burn my love for Jesus. And so surround yourself with people who are even more in love with Jesus. And then just test it out in the small way so that when it comes to the big moments, you feel more confident. And so I would do this thing where I would find the one every day, and it would just be finding one person that I could love. And so when I was out in public, I'd be God, who is the one today? And it would be it might have been a lady in the line at the grocery store, and I go up to her and I share something that I feel God is telling me for her. And so it was just this practice of finding. And I remember driving back from the airport, and my dad and I had just dropped off Jack, and I turned to my dad and I was Dad, I think he's the one. And we were a few months into dating, and my dad said, well, then Riley spends 7 times more thinking about how you can help his calling than how he helps yours. And so I really do think that we also find the voice of God, and we learn the voice of God, just as we were saying at the beginning of this conversation, in a movement of faith and in service. Love is always put in its proper place when you think more of the other person than you think of yourself. And so learn to hear Jesus and how to love people well, because love and service is the greatest gift that you can give when you're in marriage. But start doing that now. Start partnering with Jesus to love your neighbor.
So good. And I feel all of that is a great end note, but I want to highlight, I don't think we do that enough of, I want to be with this person because they are this and I can partner with them. It's usually, well, they make me feel this way or they treat me this, which is incredible and necessary. But it's I see something on their life that I can partner with. I can bless that. I can strengthen that. And so together, that's some secret sauce. That's our secret sauce for this episode. I hope you've enjoyed this. And if you want to hear more about Riley's incredible testimony and her encouragements, you can get 3 Seconds of Courage on Amazon.
Yes, on all the things.
Where all the books are sold. And how can they connect with you if they want to just follow along with what you're doing?
Riley with Courage on social media, or you can email rileywithcourage@gmail.com.
Yes, you were talking about the amount of emails.
Yes.
And so I know she actually loves to get emails.
No, I love it.
She's I'll just stay up and feed my baby and read my emails. But thank you for coming back on the episode. And thank you for being part of the Dear Future Husband podcast. We will see you here next Thursday. If you're subscribed, hit that button. And thank you for being here.